Don't listen to your parents, they're old-fashioned. However, Proverbs says, My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. Listen. Sorry, I was just thinking about the chains around the neck thing. Oh, it's going to be one of these. We're going to have to work at the legs one by one by one by one. Can't you just all pop off like you do sometimes? I like when you... Oh. Maybe it's just me. I forgot that he did that attack. I have to defend a little while until... Okay, that means my sword's back in order. I forgot that they did that attack and they could corrupt your sword. Makes them a little bit more annoying, but again, if you can just hit them on the height of their jump, they shouldn't be a problem. So now we can restore our faith. I wonder. Yeah, but it looks like we're either not going to get the traps and snares, or it's going to be close to the end. Which is really annoying because we're running to them like crazy. It's God's fault when your life's a mess. So, Proverbs actually says, the foolishness of man perverteth his ways, and his heart fretteth against the Lord. So, this is our first trap that we can actually kill outright this time. Because I'm not seeking out those other traps to do it. It's just crazy and foolish. Deuteronomy 18:10-11. Excuse me. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits. What is it with all this stuff all of a sudden? Or a wizard, or a necromancer. A little bit about Moloch worship and that, which I'll get into in a little bit. Genesis 1:26. And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So, it sounds like God's plan was to create us to be like Him, to rule over the creatures of this world. Wow, right off the bat. Looks like I'm going to have to explain something later. God created man on the sixth day after He had created everything else. He saved man for last as the crown of His creation to watch over and govern the creatures of this world in the same way as He watches over and governs all things. However, something went wrong, thus the fall. The fall of man really corrupted everything. There's a lot of people that bring up the thing about the R. It could be there's multiple theories about that. All of them, he who dies the most toys wins. 1 second. It could be either seen as a royal R, as in that they do with kings and queens. I don't have this one. He could be talking with the angels. One of my personal theory is, since Genesis is being relayed to Moses, is Moses getting a frame. Probably what's going on is, more likely you talk about me or mine when you're thinking to yourself in your head, or you're talking to yourself, and more likely this is just God talking to Himself. And, God can do that because He's God. I'm not going to question anything God does. Hey, I talk to myself. Why can't He? So, whatever. We're moving on through. really quickly, I said Exodus that Deuteronomy had a reference to Moloch worship. That was the passing the children through the fire. That had to do with human sacrifice, which is a big staple of worship of the Canaanite god Moloch, where they would actually sacrifice their children and burn them alive. And what God was saying with idolatry is he did not want the children of Israel to, I think this way, the jump tunnel, to conform to the ways of the nations around them. And one of the nations observed Moloch worshiping. God has no power, he's a wimp. Which is human sacrifice. And God did not want that. Okay. Let's see. I would say this one works, because everything results with nothing, and really, God's above it all. So, now you know a little bit more about Moloch worship. They make the Mayans look like wimps. Who needs to stab our children? We'll just burn them alive. So, this is all familiar territory. Now let's get out of familiarity and work our way around. So, seances and certain spells are acceptable as long as they are preceded by prayer. But God did not want any idolatry. He did not want anybody who used divination or was an observer of times, which probably is more about astrology. I have no idea what that's about. Or an enchanter, or witch, charmer, consulter with familiar spirits, wizard, or necromancer. Each of these are certain things. Okay. Moloch worship. Divination, which has to do with one second. I think it has to do with consulting spirits. But that's why we have our good friend Mr. Webster here. See, divination. The art of practice of using omens or magic powers to foretell the future. Actually, so it has to do with foretelling the future. Observer of times. You know what? Let me make a note of that and get back with you. I think it has to do with astrology. Enchanter, witch, charmer, consulter with familiar spirits, with familiars, other spirits, a wizard, or necromancer, which has to do not really talking with the dead, but using the dead for power, consulting with the dead. So if you see any fortune tellers, all these psychics, whatever, God does not take highly with that. More often than not, some of them are actually, you're dealing with demons and other ungodly spirits, and a lot of that is also in the case of Moloch worship, taking your eyes away from God and going in the exact opposite direction. If God's light, this is darkness. Observer of times. I would have to say that's astrology. Some people get really, really big into astrology and use it for all sorts of things. And that's very dangerous, because that you're taking that power away from God. And God does not like when other people try to usurp his power and authority or other things. God's desire was that we would be like him and rule over the creatures of the world. Genesis 1:26. So in we go. Oh, what is it with these traps? Just buy on credit. Worry about the cost later. Okay. Okay. I don't think we have it, but I always want to check to make sure. Nope, we don't have it. Okay, moving on. Oh, yay, one of these. Zappers. It's okay to hold on to grudges. See. No, that won't work. We're going to be getting another one later on that has to do with that, and we will talk about that then. Luke 12:20. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? That has to do with it was a parable that Jesus gave. There was a farmer that he was a very, very hard-working farmer, and he had all these crops, and he had everything. He raised these crops. He had an abundance of crops, and when other people would take a break, he would store these crops in barns and store for the future, and he would build more and more barns, so they had enough kind of this wealth that he could retire early. And he said, he thought to himself, you know what, self, I've been kind of good. I've done everything well. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to retire early, which is good, and I'm going to enjoy life. But the reason that God said unto him, Thou fool, is because he did not give God credit. And God said unto him, Who do you think provided the rain and the sunshine, all this? And that's why this night thy soul shall be required of thee. So you should let people know how great you are. Otherwise, how will they know? Okay. Okay. I don't think we have that one. I think I know what we're going to be getting for it. So many scriptures to look forward to. And so many trap rooms, man. What's with these traps? So we get something here. Proverbs 27:2. Let another man praise thee, there we go, and not thine own mouth, a stranger and not thine own lips. I was thinking they were going to give the parable from, well, they probably couldn't fit the parable, but there's a parable in the Gospels where, actually it's not a parable, Jesus basically said that, basically, if you're not like the Pharisees who go to the uppermost rooms, however, pick the lowest room when you're at a party. That way, that way instead of going to the uppermost rooms and then having somebody more worthy than you comes along and you're asked to go down, instead the host comes to you and said, "Friend, move on up, go to a higher room," and thus instead of being embarrassed in the case of going to an upper room and going down, now you're exalted and you are honored because you go to a higher room. And that's why Jesus said, everyone who exalts himself shall be abased, and everyone who humbles himself shall be exalted. So, there we go. You're getting parables all over here. It's God's fault when your life is a mess. Not so, but what do we have here? I want to say the foolish man perverteth his ways. It's man's fault that he gets in that mess. I was too slow. Ow. This better be a prayer room. I need one. The watch would be another trap. Nope, it's a conversation room right in the middle. So in 1 Samuel 16:7, but the Lord said to Samuel, Look not on his countenance or on the height of his stature, because I refused him. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. What was happening here is Samuel was looking for God sent Samuel to look for the next king of Israel. The current king, Saul, was causing a lot of trouble, was not listening to God, and was getting Israel in trouble because of it. And it was just because of this problem. You see, David's brothers kept on coming in, and each one looked handsome. Each one looked like they were going to be a king. And Samuel was like, "Oh, I should anoint this one." God says, "No, it's not them. It's not him." And that's why the Lord was saying, "Look not on the countenance," because God looks at the heart. See, the problem with Saul is Saul was what the people wanted. Saul looked like a king, but the problem was that Saul did not rely on God and put his trust in God, and did not listen to the words of the prophet. So that's why it was very important for God that David was anointed king, because David while he may not have had a countenance of king, he had the heart that God was looking for. So this doesn't mean that God looks at me in a different way on the inside, and he wants to see my motives. Exactly. So what the Bible is telling us is that God looks at us in a very different way than man does. He doesn't look at the outward appearance only, but he looks within us to see our true motives. To him, this is much more important. God is looking for people who are committed to him. And that's why David was a man after God's own heart, because David messed up many times, but David was always humbled himself, always came back to God, always repented. And that was important. David did not exalt himself as the parable in the one scripture said. Instead, he humbled himself. And that's what God wants. God wants a humble and contrite heart. So let's clear out these and work on to the last section. So when another Christian sins against you, you should immediately call your prayer group and tell all of them to pray for him. Not so, Matthew 18:15 says, "Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother." Actually, there's a system that's supposed to work in the church. If a brother trespasses against a brother, this is the first step, is that you go to him. Okay, that way if he hear them, if he hears you, and he repents and makes everything right, if he makes everything right between you and him, then, like it says, you gain a brother. The next step is, if he won't listen to you here, is you go to the pastor. You go to the pastor of the church that you guys are intense there, and you go with that brother, and you bring it before the pastor. Okay, hopefully he gets some sense. Mainly the pastor and the trustees of the church, that board, the elders of the church. You go to before the elders of the church. That way, maybe he can, in private, still get some sense talked into him, and that this problem can be settled. If he will not listen, then you go before the entire church. Then the fault is brought before the church. It's a it's a system full of checks and balances, and God designed it that way. The same thing happened in the Old Testament. In order for a fault or a crime to be brought up or accused, there had to be 2 or 3 witnesses. And that's why when you bring to elders, there needs to be multiple witnesses as well, or before the church. Although that's the first step. God doesn't care if good men die. However, it's in Isaiah that merciful men are taken away, none considering that they're taken away because there's evil to come. There might be a better scripture for that, but yeah, whatever. Now let's move into our final jump title. I'm sure for a while you guys were sick of seeing this green movement. There's still some things I want to talk about that we have not seen. They're really leaving this for last. Let's confront this guy. If you're going to be somebody important, you have to look important. However, Samuel says that, unlike man, God looks at the heart, not the outward appearance. Okay, good. This spider won't cause as much trouble as the last one. Okay, this place, I'm going to go up here and... Wow. More than likely, the victim room is down here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way around like this. A lot of rooms. See how we do here. Of course, the victim room could be here. I guarantee you that the victim room is probably going to be there. And I'm sure some of you might be looking forward to my little thing on abortion, which I have all mapped out. Man's thoughts and intentions are more important to God than mere physical appearance. Yes. Moving on through. Hello there. You're okay, you don't sin, you don't need Jesus. But actually, Paul said, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. I love that we can now kill these traps in this stupid little whatever building, dungeon, whatever you want to call this thing.